There are a number of government programs and other types of benefits that exist to replace income that's lost by employees and workers that are impacted right now by COVID-19. Some of those, like I said, are government programs that are providing a certain type of government benefit depending on the situation that someone is in. And others depend on the policies and benefits that are available through employment. So the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, which is a department of the state, has provided this handy at a glance graphic for a really quick reference of what type of income replacement is available when. This is a handy graphic, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what each of these programs could provide. Before I move to that additional level of detail, just want to call everyone's attention to the last column of the graphic, which contains a website reference for each category, which will be a place to find further information that may relate to your personal situation. So the first and the most commonly discussed form of income replacement or benefits that are available right now for workers impacted by COVID-19 are the unemployment insurance benefits. And people are potentially eligible for unemployment benefits as a replacement of their regular income if they've lost their job due to, or had their hours reduced due to COVID-19, or due to work slowdown and any other circumstance as well. They're definitely being utilized more often now due to COVID-19, and the unemployment department in the state has taken the claims more broadly and accepted and approved them in more broader circumstances than in the past, given the circumstances of the situation. So some of the sort of newish types of ways in which a person might be eligible for unemployment insurance include if you're subject to quarantine, even though you're not ill, and you're otherwise not eligible for like family leave or sick leave or disability insurance, you still might be eligible for unemployment insurance, even though it doesn't feel like, to some people, the traditional form of unemployment. Also, for parents whose children's school is closed, which is essentially all parents right now, if you have to miss work in order to be home to take care of your kids, you may also qualify for unemployment insurance, and probably do in those circumstances. In addition, the federal government signed into law the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which is being referred to as the CARES Act, in late March. And that federal law greatly expanded both the scope and also the amount of unemployment benefits available to people who are impacted right now because of COVID-19. That includes a sub-program which is called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. It's being referred to as PUA. And through that act, there's additional funding available now to supplement the amount of funding that's available through the state unemployment department. So there are some people in unemployment right now that are receiving one check from California's unemployment and also a supplemental check through the CARES Act each week. The CARES Act also expanded the scope of people that qualify for unemployment. It's now including contractors, freelancers, and self-employed individuals that in the past really never qualified for unemployment because they weren't employees. So that's a new opportunity, and a lot of people are being able to make up for the lost revenues in their sort of independent work or self-employment that was not available in the past. In addition, the CARES Act also extends the duration of benefits, whereas in the past there was a limit of, I believe, 6 months maximum benefits that could be received by an unemployed employee or worker. That time period has now been extended thanks to the CARES Act. All of the benefits that are expanded or provided through the CARES Act and the PUA program will be implemented through the state unemployment department. So in California, of course, it will be implemented or administered through the Employment Development Department, the EDD. Another program or benefit that is potentially available to workers who are impacted by COVID-19 is the state disability insurance program or benefits. This type of income replacement is available to employees who are unable to work because of their exposure or quarantine or their very high risk. So just like in other work disability scenarios, it does require certification by a medical professional who would certify the exposure, quarantine, or high risk. And once the medical professional did certify, then the person would apply to the state for disability benefits, which are similar to unemployment benefits in terms of the amount of income that it replaces. It's not available to people who are on unemployment. They're exclusive programs. If there are employees, moving on to paid family leave, if there are employees who are unable to work because they're caring for a family member, so that's, you're not you're not quarantined, you're not ill, you're not necessarily unemployed, but you cannot work because you're taking care of an ill or quarantined family member. This is a scenario in which you might be eligible for paid family leave under state law. And again, there was a bit of reference in the first slide for people that want to learn more about that opportunity. But it is, again, mutually exclusive of the disability and unemployment programs and benefits. Two other forms of income replacement that we just haven't mentioned on the slides are sick leave. So every employee in the state of California has a right to 3 days of paid sick leave per year. And I think that number has been increased recently by executive order of the governor for frontline workers. So if to the extent that a person hasn't already exhausted her 3 days of paid sick leave and she becomes sick, that may be, however inadequate, it may be a brief benefit that's available for people who are themselves sick or taking care of sick family members. If the employer that you're working for or used to work for also offered additional sick days above and beyond the 3 that are required by state law, those would also be available to you if you've accrued them and haven't already used them at the time that you become sick, if you become sick. And finally, if an employee becomes sick because of an exposure at work, and this could be any type of exposure, and actually I'm going to go into this a little bit later in more detail, but if a person becomes sick at work because of work, and that could include contracting COVID-19 or becoming exposed to COVID-19 at work, she may potentially fall into the worker compensation system, which is yet another form of insurance provided through the employer for injuries and illnesses caused by work, and it would replace a portion of the income as well. Now, how do you apply for unemployment benefits? This is a bit of a shifting target and also a sort of ever-shifting answer. So we're giving you the most updated information that we have at the time that we compiled this presentation. The Employment Development Department is working nonstop to increase access to its services and also to increase its capacity to receive what have been unprecedented numbers, of course, of persons seeking unemployment benefits. For now, the quickest way to apply for unemployment is by visiting the claims website that's listed here. It's edd.ca.gov/claims. It does require a bit of delay if you don't already have a benefits program login. So you have to set up the login, file the claim, register to certify the benefits, and then basically keep checking back. Some of the pieces, including like a new user registration, arrive by regular mail, and other things arrive through the electronic system. So it takes a bit of checking. Unfortunately, there is still quite a lot of delay, as I've heard from people around the Valley in obtaining the benefits once they've been filed. And that's despite Governor Newsom's order that the first week that typically was not awarded of benefits for unemployment has now been waived or taken out during the COVID-19 crisis. But this would be the way to get started with your claim. So related to the number of programs that exist for replacing income due to loss to work, there are a number of other types of workers' rights that exist to protect employees during this time of great risk. In general, and this is really any time, every employer has a duty to provide a safe workplace. And so those guarantees are provided in the labor code, and they're enforced by Cal OSHA or federal OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administrations of the state and the federal government. So even before there was any risk of COVID-19, and even when we're not in a period of emergency as we are now, every employer has to furnish an employment and place of employment that is safe and healthy for the employees. And conversely, employers cannot require employees to work in any workspace that's not safe and healthy. The law also prohibits anyone from failing or neglecting to do everything necessary to protect the life, safety, and health of employees. And that applies to any place of employment. So if it's a person that's, for example, working in the fields and changes fields from time to time, or if it's a person that works all around a golf course or that's traveling from place to place as a condition of work, all of those spaces are defined as a quote-unquote place of employment, and therefore all of these protections apply as an obligation to the employer in all of those spaces. Now that we are in the emergency period of COVID-19 and there are all kinds of new types of health and safety risks presented to people who continue working, Cal OSHA has developed a new set of rules regarding those specific new risks, and they're even more specific to different types of industries and circumstances. So it wouldn't be possible to go through all of those here because they're so industry specific, but we have included the link from the Cal OSHA website, and you could also find it by Googling Cal OSHA COVID-19 regulations to find out the new rules that are applying. Now, Cal OSHA is the state agency, as I mentioned, that enforces all of these protections. It can't be enforced through, any other place. So if a person wishes to make a complaint to Cal OSHA, and we've put the number up here in red, this is a 24-hour complaint line for the San Bernardino region, which is our region, and it is possible to make anonymous complaints. However, if you make an anonymous complaint, it makes it much more difficult for Cal OSHA to follow up with any questions or clarifications or more details that it may request, and it could result in less enforcement. It also makes it more difficult to protect yourself against retaliation, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, because if you've complained anonymously and the employer finds out about it anyway, the employer sometimes will pretend that it had no idea who had complained, and therefore it couldn't have retaliated against you. So it's harder to protect yourself, ironically, if you make an anonymous complaint. Although, of course, I understand also the motivations to do so. Now, going back a bit on the topic that we touched on earlier of worker compensation, if an employee becomes ill or injured because of a condition in the workplace, or really anything that happens in the workplace, that employer is responsible to cover all of the medical needs that arise from the illness or injury. So that is interpreted to include any illness or other illness or injury that may be caused during the COVID emergency. I haven't seen any of these cases processed yet, but these protections certainly would apply if the employee could link her sickness, her COVID-19 sickness, to the workspace. So the benefits that would come out of a worker compensation claim would include medical care, potentially disability payments, income replacement under the worker compensation system, which I think is 2/3 or roughly 2/3 of the normal income, rehabilitation and possibly retraining payments for the future, and even death benefits. So anyone who wants to learn more about worker compensation in general, we've linked a fact sheet here for your reference, and you could also consult with a worker compensation attorney. In addition to all of the state laws that have existed always to protect us and that are being applied under COVID-19, Riverside County's orders dating back to April additionally are requiring that employers provide face coverings to all employees and require that they're used at all times. And this is, of course, for the businesses that are permitted to operate as essential businesses. Employers are also required to ensure 6 feet of distance between employees and employees to clients or customers, to ensure sanitation, which of course is already required by state law. And any violation of those new, more specific requirements could potentially subject the businesses to closure by County Environmental Health Department. In the event that you're facing a violation of any of these protections, or you're concerned about the health and safety at work, or any other, really any violations of your rights at work, you may complain initially to your supervisor or to your foreperson. And in many scenarios, workers who do that are faced with additional violations of retaliation. And so I thought it was important to include this slide to remind everyone that it is illegal for an employer to discriminate or discharge an employee who's exercised her rights. So that would be retaliation. But importantly, it happens all the time, and I'm being honest about that because I don't like to make or give false expectations or make false promises about the likelihood of retaliation occurring. It's very common. It's illegal. It is possible to make legal claims later for retaliation that has occurred, but it doesn't stop it from happening in the moment. And so there is a risk occasionally of losing your job, being demoted, going through other types of negative treatment at work after making complaints. And it's important to weigh, what is the priority in the moment when you're thinking about making complaints. So I've listed here some of the examples of exercises of rights that are protected and for which retaliation would be prohibited. And there are many, many more, of course. And anyone who's considering making a complaint or who has already made one and is concerned about retaliation, I encourage them to contact a lawyer to discuss what the possible outcomes are and what protections they might have moving forward.